So when you get to the back of the loom, you want to get your cones or whatever you use for your floating selvage and wrap this new warp end around the cone. And take the warp end and you're going to put the new warp end through the heddle where the broken warp end was. So you have to find it. And I can see the broken warp end is up here in the front. If I pull it out of the reed carefully and kind of wiggle it back and forth, you can see which heddle it's in. So here's my heddle that it's in, right here. I'll pull it out of that heddle. This is the broken end. I'm going to put the new replacement warp end from the back of the loom right through that same heddle and pull it through. And then you can see the empty dent in the reed. You can pull it through there also. Okay? That way you've got a new warp end. And do not hang the weight off the back of the loom yet. First, we want to go back to the front of the loom, and we're going to tie this new warp thread onto the fabric to anchor it. So what I usually do is I take the T-pin, just hang the broken warp end off to the side in this case, and I'm gonna leave a bit of a tail so I can wrap it around this pin. I'm gonna put the pin in the fabric about maybe a half an inch to an inch down from the fell or where you stopped beating in the weft. And when you put it in there, try to get it so that where the pin comes out is right where that warp end is going to run. So here's the broken warp end, and my pin is coming out right there where that warp end runs. So move the broken one off to the side, take the new one, and start to wrap this around the pin. I usually do like a figure 8 just to secure it in this spot right here. Just wrap it around several times to make sure it's nice and secure and anchored to the fabric, so that when you start weaving, you're going to weave, if you can, if you have some of the broken warp end, you can leave that and weave the new end and the old end together for a little bit, and then you can cut this off wherever you want to. But the whole point of it is that you want to overlap these two in the warp for a little distance, just so that you've got this splicing thing going. It's just like when you end a weft thread and then you start a new bobbin with a new weft thread in your weft, you always overlap them, and that's going to be the same technique that you use here. It doesn't have to be overlapped this long, but overlap a bit so that it's secure when you finish your piece. Then you can always just trim off the tails wherever they stick up out of the fabric later on. So once you have this secured to the fabric in the front like this, you can see the new warp end is sort of in the new place where the old warp end broke. You can go back to the back of the loom and just hang the weight off the back of the loom. I think I have to wrap it a little bit more so it doesn't hit the floor. So hang this weight off the back of the loom in line with where the old end was. And here's the old end. You're just going to let the old broken warp end just fall down. You're not going to weave that. So here's your new warp end. Now as you advance the fabric, as you weave, you're going to need to come back here like you do with your floating selvages, and as this draws up to the top, you're going to have to, of course, undo this and let out some more of the thread until you're done with the piece. So kind of treat it like one of your floating selvages from here on in. So when we go back to the front, all we have to do is start weaving over that spot. Start weaving over this spot. I'm going to incorporate the broken warp end for a few picks anyway. You can kind of pull on it. If the broken warp end is long enough, you can do this. If it's not long enough, you can just trim it. You can just pull it out here and trim it later. And then just leave it, pull it towards you, both of the new tail and the old tail, just pull them towards you as you weave the remainder of your fabric. And when you get finished with your piece, you can just go in, and after you wash your piece, you can take this out. It's still on the weight, but you can unwrap that, and then you'll have these two tails, and you can just trim them. If you want to, you can, and if you have enough of the warp end, you can put a needle, thread a needle with this piece of yarn and just weave it with a needle through the same line, just like through here like this with the needle, and pull it out, and then it'll overlap more to keep it secure. But this is how you correct a broken warp end. And if you just have a T-pin, you can easily use that for the anchoring point. And when that I'm going to stop it, Savannah.